Hey again, welcome to the second part of my coverage of the Mega Man Star Force series. If you're here without watching the first part, you should probably check that out first, because today I'll be comparing and contrasting the second and third games directly to the first, which was covered in part 1, and a little bit about my work. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you for all your responses. It was just what I was looking for. I wanted well thought out counter arguments, and I got just that. So I'm going to hit those points before we move on to the next games. Multiple people let me know that Geo'S personality changes gradually throughout the series, and for some people, it was one of their favorite aspects of the games. That's great. But if you were playing this game when it came out, or as a standalone game when there were no sequels, all you had to go on was a small bit of growth in the main character when there really needed to be more to make an effective story for just that one standalone game. I was surprised to find that there were a good number of people saying that the navigation wasn't all that bad. Like, did you actually play this game? It was, the first game was bad, and just wait till you hear what I have to say about the second game because they somehow made it worse. I want to address what I said about the battle system, as I got a lot of "that's personal preference" responses. So first, you're absolutely right. The battle system is different. It's more reactive instead of proactive, like I said, and that can be a positive thing for others. But at the same time, that wasn't the entire point I wanted to get across. It was a few different things all combining into one overarching issue with the battle system. So I want to clear that up and try and get my point across a little more clearly. So when the battles are reactive and super fast paced, you don't get the time to learn a boss's attack patterns and how to deal with them. It's more focused on just dishing out all the damage you can as fast as possible. And in the same vein, when battles end as quickly as they do, you don't get to bond, a bad word, with the enemies. Even though the games were played fairly recently for me, I can only remember a handful of the bosses, because they appeared, they caused trouble, and then I beat them in 20 seconds. It's not that they weren't threatening, because they certainly were if they got the upper hand, but you were always as threatening, if not more. Again, it's not an easy idea to get across, but I remember dealing with Quickman's hyperspeed and Bubbleman's cowardly plays, Skullman's never-ending onslaught of pressure, and how impossible Shademan was to beat. But all I can really remember about any of Star Force's bosses was, I guess Gemini was like kind of difficult to keep track of the two sides at once. But that's really it. That's kind of the point I'm trying to get across. And due to the nature of the battles, I don't get a lasting impression of the bosses or even the viruses. Are they still called viruses? Whatever. In many cases, those are some really cool characters, and it's a shame that you don't get to bond with them more. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's get started with Star Force 2. Zerker. That was the version I picked because it appealed to me the most. Although, let's be honest, if you guys have seen the scrapped ideas for the third game with the pirate and angel tribes, those would have been way cooler than a frickin' dinosaur. And just like with the first video, I'll be reading the notes that I wrote during my playthrough word for word and only really adding to it if I feel the need to. I immediately see an improvement on Geo'S mugshot, and maybe personality, as well as them finally allowing you to use the touchscreen for text input, so we're off to a really good start. They included an option to skip the battle tutorial, something that has been vacant in the entire franchise as a whole. Really, really appreciate that. It seems they took the flat, relatively lifeless characters, and instead of rounding them out a bit more in the sequel, they made them even more static and one-dimensional, when they really could have built upon them. They forgot to put spaces after every single comma in the game, and it makes me so horribly upset. It really rustles my jimmies. I don't even think people say that anymore. It's thrown me back to 2014, and my jimmies are rustled. My jimmies will never return to where they're at. Okay, so still trying to wrap my head around the whole overlapping worlds and crap here. So if I were to explain it, Tier 1 is simply seeing and interacting with the physical world around you, just like you and I do on a day-to-day basis. Tier 2 is when you put on your glasses and you can see the EM world, but you can't interact with it. Tier 3 sends you into the EM world where you can still see the physical world and interact with the objects, but not people since they can't see you. Okay? Unless there's a bad guy around that's causing a ton of EM stuff in the air, and then other people can interact with you and the waves and stuff. Okay. Lastly, Tier 4 is when you go into a deeper concentration of EM waves that can be accessed through the Tier 3 world, but only after you interact with certain objects in the lower tier world. And then to make matters all worse, Star Force 2, the Tier 3 world is now mixed with the lower tier worlds. It's merged in between them. So navigation between physical sections of the real world can often involve jacking and navigating to a different section of a different world in Tier 3 just to walk from point A to point B in Tier 2 or 1. And in Star Force 2, they introduced the Skywave, which I guess would be a secondary Tier 4, with the purpose of connecting different Tier 3 maps. So now there's yet another rule to recall for how the dang jack-in travel system works. I honestly can't believe how they took a simple function as walking and made it so complicated with these games. How do you mess up walking? So they bring up this visible zone a few times, and I can't help but think, like, what the heck would people see otherwise? Specifically, I'm to the part where Taurus goes berserk and forms in the real world. So Mega comes in and stops him. But, like, Taurus is obviously visible, and if he wasn't causing that visible zone distortion, Mega wouldn't be. So would Taurus just appear to be, like, punching the air during battle? Now this might sound like I'm nitpicking, but it just frustrates me thinking how little effort was put into planning ahead or explaining the world as these games were made. They kind of hold themselves into a corner and it just works themselves out of it. Ah, yay. Geo went back to being mopey and lame again for a while. Call me when he's a halfway likable character.
I don't remember what part of the game that was, but it was bad enough for me to write it down, so I'm putting it in the script. Thanks.
They fixed my issue with changing forms in the first games, so now you equip your alternate form outside of battle. That's how it should have been the entire time, but I'm just glad it's here. This point is a real shame, guys, because I had originally written a pretty high-praising pro point, but I had to turn it into a con because the game took what was good and they made the worst possible decision they could have with what they had. Let me explain. They gave Sonya, who, in my opinion, is the only likable character so far between these first two games, they gave her a better role in this game by having her be a separate entity, a separate hero-like character, and then when it's needed, saving the world alongside Geo as a duo. It was really cool to see that dynamic play out for a while. And then they ruined it. She gets kidnapped and could likely fight back and win because, as we've seen, she's fully capable of saving the day on her own. But the writing suddenly removes her common sense and makes her a standard damsel in distress, which the game already has. So they gave her a character trait that was awesome and makes changes to the storyline and builds her character up, and then develops an already decent character, and dare I say it, a great character, and rips all that away from her in favor of the worst possible story choice. Man, that hurts. I thought I had told you. No touch-based minigames. I thought I told you they were the worst thing ever. I thought you listened to me. I thought I could trust you. I don't know why I thought that. So why did you put one at the end after not having any of them throughout the entire game? And this is easily the most stupid and frustrating one of them all. So you have to memorize shapes that flash on the screen for a fraction of a second, and then draw them at an increasingly tight time frame. This is all exacerbated by the fact that the controls only work if you precisely touch both ends of the line, leaving you with gaps in the pattern because you were going too fast and just barely cut a corner. But if you take it slightly slower, you run out of time. hate you, Star Force 2. I really do. I hate you. Now, I'll admit, the first game, I got all the title screen stars, and I intended to do that with every game in the series. I did not do that with this one. I was pretty much done and ready to move on after beating the main boss. Maybe there's some insanely cool stuff to do post-boss, but honestly, I was having a really hard time getting Dark Phantom's SP form to appear after like an hour of looking, so I got frustrated and moved on to the next game. So, I'm sorry, I guess. Maybe I'm missing out, but overall, this was a pretty lackluster sequel. It fixed a few of the issues that the first game had, but at its core, the story was terrible, and the improvements that were made didn't cover up the detriments that had appeared alongside them. So now I sit. I got a chair this time. Sit before you, a broken man. I don't know how I'm going to survive another one of these, but Star Force 3. I went with Black Ace because, I mean, hey, like, with Geo's arm not being an alien head anymore, I think now is a good time to say that I actually really love the designs of some of the characters and bosses. I mean, Star Force Mega looks like a combination of the Battle Network and Zero series protagonists mashed together, and aside from his stupid hair, that's a work of art. Okay, so why the heck do you need a new device in every game? In Battle Network, you had upgraded models of PETs every couple of games, but you always had that, a PET. It was a constant. In Star Force, you change your wording all the time, and it's not just limited to that. So how do you expect your fans to talk about these things? And Mega, for the first two games, you just talk about him as an EM Ian. But now he's a wizard, because those are now a thing. Same thing applies to what this game refers to as cyber cores. They were called two different things in the two prior games. Pulsin is now called Transin, which I for one support Trans Geo. And I think it's just called Wave Change in the first game. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the list of arbitrary name changes goes on, and the level of inconsistency is just kind of baffling as to how you can market these things. Saying that Mega is a wizard now also means that, hear me out, in this universe, technology has adapted to perfectly meet the needs of a random grade schooler and his secret alien friend. Do I have that right? They brought back the stupid click on a thing when you're close to it to jack in from the first game. I don't know why they did. Second game had things better, at least in that regard. I think they made the battle grid one row smaller. Don't quote me on that, but it feels like it. And if they did, good for them. If they didn't, ignore me. It's great to see that they removed the option to skip the battle tutorial. What's the purpose of having the stacked battle chips in battle? I mean, I can't select some of them because they're slightly underneath another one, but if I take out the one on top, I still can't pick the one underneath? It's probably just a counterbalance because now you can select chips in the same row as well as the same column, but it's executed in kind of a counterintuitive manner. I just was taught how they can be used, but it's still kind of dumb. The main storyline objects in the second game were these matter waves. They showed up everywhere. They were everywhere. They directly impacted the game, and they were related to an ancient civilization that's been around for who knows how long, meaning that they've been around for those ages and are now becoming a crucial part of everyday life in the year 22XX. A short while later, in the third game, not only are they never heard of again, but there's a tree on the roof of the school that's made with real waves, effectively destroying the entire main plot points of the entire second game. It's only more baffling when you realize that, in-universe, the time that passed between the three games is like, maybe a year? Meanwhile, physical PETs and a handful of NetNavis can be seen in Star Force 1, and those come from a time 200 years in the past. You visit your third mall area. Great creativity. Battle Network had you revisit areas like Scilab in the different games, and the layouts were all different. This basically gives the same situation, but fundamentally it's different. It goes back to what I said earlier about Battle Network having constants and Star Force changing everything with each iteration. You can have 3 different malls, but you could instead have a singular mall that's an iconic area with an iconic name. Same name, new face. Another example would be Kakariko Village from the Legend of Zelda games. It's a different town in every game that you see it, different layout and everything. But the town itself is a constant. It's an old school village with the past tied to the Sheikah a lot of times. If nothing else, it's just a common name, somewhere where you walk in and go, ah yes, Kakariko, that's familiar. I wonder what I'm going to do here. No doubt it's important though. You ask me to name a town from a Zelda game and I'm immediately going to say Kakariko. You ask me to name a location in Star Force? I don't know. I mean, how about that ski resort from the second game? Or the observatory platform in the first game that was Geo'S favorite place in the world, but was then consequently bulldozed over and never seen again after the first game. Do you see what I mean? There's so little that remains constant between the 3 games that I'd swear they were made by 3 different teams and just got the Spark Notes version of how the prior ones worked. Whoa, 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 okay, hold up. There was just a load of information about noise dropped just now. The dude on the TV said that it's potentially the most dangerous thing to exist, and they don't know what it is quite yet, and that it's actively being produced by wizards. I'm sorry, but if teleportation became a real thing, and it's like the coolest thing ever, but the only downside is that it actively produced anthrax whenever you used it, I'm pretty sure I'd just drive. Alright, I had a genuine smile on my face when everyone goes to the beach and they talk about the generations-old secret technique from Battle Network 5. Platforming? In my RPG? Jumping over cracks in the floor is infinitely better than tapping on touchscreen arrows. Lie to your parents. Quote, acid is a national secret. End quote. Was an actual phrase uttered by Ace in a game where earlier he showed him off to the public at a mall. Lie to your parents. Okay, I was holding off on saying anything about this because I was worried I was going to jinx it. But they finally figured out how to make a functioning map system. I'm not exaggerating when I say that these maps are perfect. It all makes sense. There's no unnecessary jacking in, jacking out just to walk across the screen. There's not a main location I can't access from the fast travel bus thing either. Even when you have to go places via the Sky Road, I don't remember what it's called this time around because, surprise, they arbitrarily changed the name of something, but navigation's pretty straightforward, and oh my word, it took you 3 games, but you finally figured it out. Yes! I'll start off by saying that I do think that the noise change mechanic is a great improvement over the past 2 games. It functions like a double soul, and activates like a style change. That being said, if it functions like a double soul, it would make a lot more sense to be able to switch depending on the battle situation, instead of being granted a random change every so often. You don't have to copy, say, Battle Network 6, but they had a really good thing going for them. So, like, why didn't you? Dread Joker is just literally palette-swapped Laserman. Changed my mind. Lie, and I cannot stress this enough, to your parents. Wait, yo, holy crap, there's program advances. Since when? I'm literally about to take on the secret final boss, and I'm just now learning this. Why did no one tell me? I did it. I played all 3 of the Star Force games and survived. I don't know if I can necessarily say that I'm proud of it, but at the end of the day, my entire mission was to see if my notably negative opinion of the series has changed at all after giving them a second look. So, what do I think? I'm gonna be brutally honest here. If you're curious about these games and have not played the Battle Network games yet, do yourself a favor and try one of those first. Maybe start with number 2. Don't even give these games the time of the day until you've got the other series at least under your belt. If you have played the Battle Network games, then should you give these games a try? Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's definitely some fun to be had, but there's definitely some issues to work through. At the end of the day, if you're looking for my opinion, you're better off replaying your favorite on the GBA. Except for Star Force 3. I know it's weird and it doesn't even seem natural to say it out loud, but Star Force 3 was thoroughly enjoyable. The battle flow has been notably evened out, and the map system took a complete 180 from the second game and is honestly great. The storyline's the best in the series, and in general, the flaws have been ironed out the best that they can, and the improvements that they made fit right in. And, best of all, it makes a great standalone game. So, if you're a Mega Man fan and you're looking for something new, skip those first 2 DS iterations and jump straight into Star Force 3. But while you're waiting to find a copy, why not take some time and check out my itch.io page down in the description to find out what I've been working on. I've got a visual novel called Melatia with Love from Lumon. And heck, there's a free bonus chapter right now that's based on another Capcom game series, so maybe give that a try. It's free, what do you gotta lose? And if you're not into that sort of thing, why not consider supporting me on Patreon so I can make more videos like this? Hint, hint. Links to everything are in the description. And until next time, I'll see you later, Chowderheads.